Hey, welcome to Navigate Your Job Search. I'm your host, George Murray, and each week we try to bring in a subject matter expert on a title and help those who are struggling in job search. Um, we ask people to ask questions because the question that you might be asked, there may be three or four people wishing that they asked the same question. So encourage questions. We are streamlining on Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube Live. And by Saturday afternoon, will be uploaded to all the podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify for those people that are on the run. The episode today, before our Labor Day weekend, is Mastering Your Career, Navigating Job Search, and Cultivating a Network Pipeline for Success with Graham Riley. So Graham and I have been connected for a couple of years now. He is the CEO of Maverrik North America, and I'll have him go in a little bit more detail about what all that is. But he's also a LinkedIn sales navigator coach. So welcome to the show, Graham.
Hey, hello, George. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So why don't you tell the viewers before we kind of get started, um, what does your company do and kind of, what you've been experiencing the last year?
Sure. So we help people be successful on LinkedIn, and success looks different to different people. We help individuals who are looking to develop new business opportunities in terms of selling and generating revenues. And we also help job seekers who are looking to land their new position. And we find that LinkedIn is a great platform because the audience for either buying in a B2B situation or hiring, your audience is already on LinkedIn. And then if they're there, why not speak to them there and represent yourself there?
Oh, I like that. Speaking of obstacles for job seekers, what are the biggest obstacles job seekers are currently experiencing now, maybe over the last 7 months with all these layoffs?
Sure. One of the universal challenges that I hear, in fact, last week I had 27 calls with people, and I obviously, like you, George, I keep a track of, who I'm speaking to. Universally, every person I spoke to last week started off with this: I'm frustrated. I keep submitting my resume, but I never hear anything back. It's like I'm on a treadmill. And I I I want to be empathetic in that moment and share that that lack of response, that it feels like a silent rejection, right?
Hmm.
And it sort of plays on our soul. So what I noticed is it was regardless, that observation was regardless of whether somebody was just joining the labor force, they were recent graduates, all
Hmm.
the way through to seasoned executives, people who are in SVP or C suite roles, regardless of industry and also regardless of geography.
No, I would agree. And again, this last couple of years, and I'll add a little bit to that. The last couple of
Mhm.
years, as being social creatures, we've been told not to be up until maybe the last year or so. But
Right,
I think that has had a lot to do with maybe some compassion and the ability to be humble and help others, right? And
right.
a lot of people in job transition, they haven't created what I call a call list, right? So if you're having a bad day, who's the five people that you can call
Yeah,
that you can get back on track or at least feel better about the day. There's definitely
absolutely.
weeks. There's definitely weeks, sometimes a couple of weeks where people go and it's like you need to change something.
Right, right, right. So what am I to change? Because what I grew up with, what has served me really well in the past, is I polish up my resume.
Hmm.
I'm of an age, George, where we used to see job ads in the newspaper, in the trade rags, right? We'd type up our resume or CV, handwrite a cover letter, lick and stick the stamp, and off it went. And then with the job boards, etc., it's still fundamentally of that resume search submit that's been ingrained in all of us and is still taught in colleges, isn't working today. If it was working, then why is all this frustration that I'm not hearing back from a recruiter?
because it's the old ways, and it's, it's kind of like the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
If it's not working, you got to get off the treadmill and kind of look at, okay, what's not working, what could be working, and the possibilities. This is, I think, the biggest thing is people, don't know what to actually try to do, right?
Right.
They
Right.
just go with what they know, and a
Yeah.
lot of those things are probably 15, 20 years old and
Yeah.
antiquated. They're not going to work anymore.
Absolutely. And so if we're detecting this frustration, we're saying that that process is antiquated, then what are we advocating? And I think a good place to start is to understand how companies are actually acquiring talent, because the more we understand about the hiring process, the greater our capability to match our efforts to fit in with that process. So on the resume search submit model, there's the assumption that the recruiter is simply sifting through resumes. And anybody that's been looking recently for a job, they'll see that when they do apply, there are perhaps 100, 200, 500 other applicants. And so just put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter or the seat of the recruiter, having to wade through 100, let alone 500 applicants. That's not a job. That's punishment. You know,
I
you must
agree.
have you must have done something
And believe me,
ter-
I've been there.
terrible, right? And so
Right.
here's what's actually happening. The company says we have a problem, we have a pain point, and we believe that this pain point can be solved by these skills, talents, experiences, and education. That's where the job description is. So it's the company's articulation of we have a pain in this area. Now, when the recruiter then posts that job description, sure, it comes up, you get an alert on which you can apply. But exactly as they are posting that position, LinkedIn says, oh, Graham, you're looking for a VP of sales with all of these skills, talents, and experiences. The algorithm goes and finds profiles that match what I'm looking for. And then I'm going to do what we all do when we search for something is I'm going to start to skim, scan, and scroll through the search results. The profiles that I like, I'm going to put into my candidate pipeline. The ones I don't, I just move on to the next one. And it gives you around 25 profiles a page. And so I'm going to collect 10 or 12, whatever the magic number is. I'm going to now ask for a copy of their resume. And because I'm biased, because I like what I see on the profile, the resume is either going to confirm or deny that bias. And so perhaps I go from 12 to 8. Then I jump on the screening call. I'm now perhaps down to 5 or 6, and it's these 5 or 6 who are going to progress through um, the system. And so that mechanism says that if your profile is on page 5 or page 30, you're a well kept secret. They're never getting to you,
Right.
right? And it also says that if a recruiter doesn't like your LinkedIn profile, they'll never ask you for a copy of your resume in order for you to change their mind.
No, absolutely. Which actually leads into the next question. How is LinkedIn being used to screen and filter candidates? You
Right.
kind of talked a little bit about that,
Yeah.
but how can I make sure that I'm in that top, one or two or three categories? Because it's like the Google search you had
Yeah.
referenced earlier, right?
Yeah.
People aren't going to go beyond 2 and 3 and 10 and 25.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's worth, and this is something you can look up yourselves. When you're on LinkedIn, go and take a look at what LinkedIn is telling recruiters about its talent solutions, its recruiter license. LinkedIn charges a recruiter, depending on how they buy it, a minimum of $9,000 a year for the
Hmm.
license, right? And
Okay.
here's the brand promise. LinkedIn says to a recruiter, if you buy this license, we will help develop your reputation of finding really good people really quickly. And which recruiter doesn't want that reputation. So that's why there's that price point. And the literature, as you read it, it tells you this is what we're doing. We'll allow you to sort, categorize, prioritize your candidates all within the platform. It
Yeah.
and not once in their literature does it says, oh, and you can review resumes. Doesn't talk about it.
Well, I think it actually, to your, what you were alluding to, it's taking a lot of work out of their day to day so that
Abs-
they can hopefully tee up the right candidates to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So not only does it help find that initial group, but there's functionality inside of the software that helps triage that candidate all the way through the hiring process with automations for um, thank yous, setting up appointments. Oh, it's all built in there.
Yeah, yeah. I have learned over the last couple of years from people like you and others, the power of the tool of LinkedIn, and it's ongoing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's as soon as you get to a certain point, they add another dozen, 25 things.
yeah.
Can you tell us, why don't we hear back from recruiters? I mean, we've taken all this time. I mean, if some people actually, they go at length of putting a really nice cover letter and everything else together, and then boom, I just lost 40 minutes of my time and I didn't even get a thanks but no thanks letter.
Right, right. Um, so this is where doing some research comes in. What researchers have, people study everything, right? So
Mhm.
how long does a recruiter spend looking at a resume? On average, in 2021, it was 7 seconds. 7 seconds. That's the last time that the study was done. Now, when it comes to cover letters, it was around 80% of recruiters don't even bother with a cover letter.
Mhm.
Don't even bother with it. And so there's even questions now coming along about, do we even need a resume? Because think of your LinkedIn profile as your digital ambassador, right? And so it's a reflection of who you've chosen to show up as a professional. It's an indication of your communication style, and it's also an indication of your attention to detail. And so just looping, tying that back in with the job description, there's a pain point that the organization has.
Mhm.
Your marketing material, your profile, and your resume should speak to how you have a track record of successfully solving those sorts of problems and the outcomes that you're able to achieve for an organization.
Oh, great. Um, I'm actually going to read a quote or somebody that just, Murray Deeth, who's out here in Minnesota, just said, Graham helped me a great deal, and I'm paraphrasing right here because I'm going through a couple of layers here, but he's helped
Right.
my son get his first job. So you've already got some fan bases out there listening to you.
Lovely. Lovely. Thanks, Murray.
And and
Checks in the mail.
yeah, what are the things that need to happen before I get an interview?
Great question. Um, I believe three things have to happen. First is awareness. How are you inserting yourself into the attention of the hiring team? And if you're simply applying for a job, you're also trying to get attention from one, two, three, 500 other people, right? So,
Yes.
how am I getting attention? Secondly, once I have somebody's attention, how am I building trust that I'm a subject matter expert in my field? And then third, how do I build the belief that I am somebody who is worth a phone call from?
Mhm.
So awareness, trust, and belief. And if I'm simply applying for jobs with everybody else, it's hard even to get that first one, that first check mark completed. And what I have also found when it comes to building trust is that people tend to understate and underrepresent their value.
Mhm.
Why? Because they're an expert in their field, it comes very easy to them, and they don't realize the value that they've been able to deliver to the organization because of all the capabilities that they've amassed throughout their career.
And I'll even go far as to add even veterans are a little worse because we are programmed and structured that nothing happens about an individual. It's all about the team. So they really need the help when they transition out of the military into their
Yeah,
first job roles and interviewing
yeah,
because they're not set up for success, right? When they're asked these questions, well, what did you leave? They led a lot. I
yeah,
mean, you want to talk about somebody who's 18 years old, or excuse me, let's say 20, who's been in the military for a couple of years, and they're responsible for like 5 tanks. I mean, each costing 60 million bucks. I mean,
mhm.
that's a huge P&L already for only somebody who's 20 years old.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the interesting things about helping people from the service, whether it's police, our military, is translating what was I there when it happened, or did I make it happen?
Yeah, did it happen because of me? Yeah.
Right, right. Another thing that's worth considering when it comes to your LinkedIn profile is if we are comfortable with the fact that a recruiter can search for us, that means then that we have two audiences for our profile. Obviously, we've got the recruiter and the hiring team, but we also have the algorithm because it's an
Mhm.
algorithm that determines what we all see today. And it's therefore, if your profile is not configured well for the algorithm or the settings, LinkedIn used to have 424 different fields and settings inside of a single profile. Now they've consolidated down to about 330. But there are some settings in there that you might have set 5 years ago or 10 years ago that are detrimental to your search today.
You know what I found interesting too, and I'm not sure a lot of people pick this up, for a specific, let's say for a specific job that you submit to,
Hmm.
there's already skills in there and it'll actually tell you, you think that, hey, I've done this for 10 years. I know what I'm doing. But what you realize is your resume compared to the job description, you might only hit 4 of the 10 skills because it's not in your resume and it's not in your LinkedIn. And
Yeah,
that, to your point, pops you out with the
yeah,
algorithm as
yeah,
opposed to selecting you.
yeah. You raise a great point there, George. If it's not written, then don't people are not
Assume.
going to assume that you have it.
Well, especially at the 7-second mark.
Yeah.
How can I establish my expert authority about above and beyond my resume and with the competition that's out there?
Sure. So what's happening with a tightening labor market is the standard in which you market yourself gets raised. Obviously, when employers are struggling to get people, they lower that standard. But right now, what we're seeing is the standard for how you market yourself is raising. And so once you've have your profile together that fairly and accurately represents your capabilities, use LinkedIn to talk about your expertise. And so we tend to, at a networking event, um, we um, we initially engage with people in a polite, professional, and courteous way, but what we're remembered for is the conversations that we had and the
Mhm.
engagement, and so use LinkedIn to comment on. So if you're the earlier example, you're in VP of sales. If you have got 10 or 50 organizations where you'd like to work, look at the CXO, the executive team, perhaps the chief revenue officer, and then add insightful comments to their posts. Now, what's
Great.
going to happen is, first of all, they're going to start become familiar with your face and your name. And then, given the quality of the comments that you're sharing, insights into your expertise, you're giving them a taste of your expertise.
Oh, I like that
Now,
one.
You could also then share something about your expertise in the form of a post. And I might have, many people in the audience think, I'm not really comfortable in posting, or what would I post about? Well, when you're in an interview, you'll be asked a question. Hey, George, tell me about a time when, then there's a question. And then what you're coming back with is, well, this is what the situation was. This is why it was important. And this is how I went about solving it. That
Mhm.
answer is a post,
Right.
right? Because that's how you start to create curiosity. Because this guy obviously has insights into the pain and the challenges that we're facing.
No, I agree. Um, so how do, or excuse me, what, or excuse me, should I pay for LinkedIn job seeker license? That's always been a question for me,
Sure, sure. I would
especially if
offer,
you're in job search.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, my answer might be a surprise. No, pay for Sales Navigator.
Mm, okay.
Why
And the
Sales
difference.
Navigate? There absolutely is a difference. Now, you'll get, unless you haven't had it before, you'll get the first month free, right?
Mm,
And anytime you're in a job search situation, time is of the essence, right?
right.
And so, what Sales Navigator will do, it will give you insights into who are the influencers and decision makers, because we know that we we know that we are not going to meet one person in the interview. I'm not meeting you today, George. Shake your hand, and we start work on Monday, right?
Right.
We have to
We
go
wish it
through.
that we wish that happened.
We wish that happened, right? The good
Yeah.
that used to happen, right? But not today. And so
Right.
today it's hire by committee, right?
Hmm.
And so if you are in looking for a sales VP of sales position, then are you connecting with members of the team that you might manage? Are you connecting with your peers? Are you connecting with the people who you'd report to inside of the organization? Because what you want to do is start to become known to them.
Yeah.
And here's another little trick why I'm advocating Sales Navigator. It allows you to look at a company and look at their employment line. Are they holding flat? Are they been losing people? Or is the company growing? And is the company growing? And let's say I'm in sales or I'm in marketing. Let's have a look at that functional area. And so there may be opportunities to be had in organizations that are not necessarily advertising that they're hiring. And so LinkedIn Sales Navigator gives you insights into the hidden job market where companies are doing well and there's opportunity to be found.
I do like the data analytics side of things because I can tell you the younger generations are definitely a lot more versed and skilled in interviewing now. I mean, the questions that they ask. I mean, they're interviewing companies just as much as companies are interviewing them. And you should
Absolutely.
be, so that you make sure that, you're not out in the next year or two because you just selected something, a bad culture, et cetera, right? And
Right.
I did want to mention that Matt Meowder made the comment to your last comment of using the STAR method, right? When
Mhm.
people ask, you know, a question in an interview process, a lot of times people tend to go off and it's literally 5, 10 minutes and it's like, okay, when am I going to finish? And the
Yeah.
STAR process is really clear and concise. And then it allows the people to say, okay, do you want me to go into more detail
Yeah.
versus trying to tell them the whole, the
Yeah.
whole ingredients of the cake.
Absolutely. And that's the whole premise of the taste.
Hmm.
Matt is on point with, I'm on social media. I don't have 10 minutes. And so, what I want to do is, I want to become an expert in creating the movie poster and the movie trailer. And the movie is engagement with me, it generates a conversation. Um, do we have time just to talk about how you go about writing your narrative on
Oh,
you?
yes.
Okay, so very often when we're writing our profiles or resumes, we think, what have we done? And it And, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Stop me if anything interests you. Look at job descriptions where you would say, I would be an ideal fit for this. And then go back through your career journey, pulling out from the various positions that you've had, how that particular skill, experience, capability would make you a viable candidate for the role that you're applying for.
That
And
reinforcement, I like that.
right now, what I'd offer is we need to capture your excitement, because you, I, Chris, Matt, Murray, everyone, we've accumulated a whole bunch of capabilities through our careers. Some things we really enjoy and we look forward to. And then there's other things that we can do, perhaps better than anybody else, but we don't enjoy it.
Right.
So let's not market that. Let's focus on the things that we enjoy, because when you enjoy something, you exude it. And when you capture that in your narrative, excitement creates curiosity. And that's what you're looking to do, is create curiosity in your problem solving capabilities.
No, I agree, and I like that. Chris Wellington's made a couple of comments, but one, he says 60 days free is a must, not to do just in your job search, but also to have a premium account on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Can you go in a little bit more detail on that LinkedIn premium account?
Well, LinkedIn has right now, I think it's 15 different licenses that you can purchase. It's owned by Microsoft, right? So it's either
Yeah.
licensing or ad revenue. Um, I would offer, if you started with Sales Navigator Core, and there's three levels of Sales Navigator. But if you start with Sales Navigator Core, I'm always a big advocate of using a tool to its full capacity before you ever then spring additional monies, right? Understand what are the restrictions, what am I not getting by not adding to that additional tier. But I think Core, when used well, is a phenomenal tool for the job search.
No, I agree. And I do like the fact that they give you, a month free so that you can test it out to say, okay, is this going to work for me? Or maybe I need to look at something else. To your point, I didn't
Yeah,
even know that they had 15. I knew back then they had like 4 or 5, but I didn't know that they had that many now.
right, right.
Which actually answer the second question, should I pay for that? How can I use LinkedIn to find companies that are hiring in my field of expertise? And even when jobs aren't posted, because again, I say this a lot of times, don't spend all your time submitting resumes because it's the single digit percentage that you'll secure a job. It's through networking, which is probably anywhere from
Hmm.
70, 80%. So can you
Right,
go into a little bit more detail on that?
sure. Um, for that insights, what you need is the Sales Navigator piece. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Sales Navigator, it's a separate product that sits on top of LinkedIn.com, and LinkedIn, it's a glorified database. That's all it is, and we manually enter and fill in all of the fields, right, in that database. And so Sales Navigator is really a query wizard. It helps you find things and be far more effective. And in LinkedIn's vocabulary, a lead is a person. And so when it comes to finding the influencers and decision makers, then what you're really looking for are leads, opportunities to connect with the right people. And an account is a company. So if you do get Sales Navigator, that's what you're looking at: leads, people, accounts, companies. You can go into if you select the account, it gives you in the wizard a lot of different opportunities to select exactly what you're looking for. And so perhaps it's, I'm going to look in Minnesota for software, computer software companies that are growing, and they have had X number of developers over the last 6 months or the last 12 months. And it will give you that information. It will show you the trend lines. And the beauty is then, okay, the company's growing. Now I just jump over into the leads, and now I can start to see, well, who's hiring? Because Link Sales Navigator gives you so much more insights into companies, you can take a look at who's just been hired, who's a relative, who's been hired in the last 90 days.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially if you're an executive and they just hired a new CEO, and expect that probably within the first 90 to 100 days, they're going to be doing their own assessment on that leadership, and there might be opportunities to grow in the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which you don't get by the time that HR pushes out a job posting. Because by
Right.
that time, right, by that time, it's all been baked. But if you have got a network of people who can actually hire you, and you're delivering insights, etc., then they're regularly seeing your face and your name. And just think about getting into the interview. Oh, George, I see your stuff all the time.
Right.
I appreciate you commenting on my post, Graham. Right? It's
Right.
very different than Tom, Dick, and Harriet who follow me into that interview, and that's the first time you're meeting with them. That's the first interaction that you had with them.
Right. No, I agree. Um, one of the things that we talked about that I didn't know until about maybe 6 years ago when I was in my first transition, or maybe a little bit longer, was the power of just the basic data, right? You can actually download all the contacts in an Excel spreadsheet. And if people, this is one thing I've learned, is people are not keeping up to date with the contact information, but you'll get their email if they put their phone number on there. I mean, you can use that data point, to your point, to really create your pipeline of people to say, I talked to these 10 people. And then you can put another, category and say, this is the last time I talked to them. All in an effort, as I kind of talk to people, is trying to keep, top of mind, because we're all busy. We'll give you some time, but 3, 4 weeks go by, we don't hear from you. We expect, well, maybe in your interviewing process, right? So it's
Mm.
always important to make sure you're finding ways to keep top of mind.
Right, right. I would offer that when you lean into your expertise and problem solving, it's of interest to the person that you're trying to network with because you're looking to improve the day in the life of them or their department, right?
Great.
Don't resist the temptation to lean in to your availability. You won't get hired because you're available or open to work. You will get hired because they feel that you've got the skills and that you're the right fit for solving their problem.
No, absolutely. But hey, Graham, we're coming to the end. I just want to ask, is there anything that we missed before we kind of wrap up, or anything that you'd like to share and add? I guess, more importantly, how do we keep our pipeline going? Because,
Sure,
especially the last couple of weeks going
sure.
into Labor Day weekend, it's going to have a lull.
Sure, sure. Our pipeline isn't an event, it's many accumulation of many little things done well. And so everyone on this call today, you are all CEOs of your services. And if you were employed tomorrow, you wouldn't have an issue delivering on those services. So you don't have a capability or capacity issue. Right now, there's a marketing issue. And so be very clear on what am I offering to the job market? Is it currently being purchased? Are people hiring from it? And does my marketing material set me apart as a subject matter expert in solving those problems? And then I'm continuously networking and engaging with people who can help move my opportunities forward.
Graham, again, thank you. I wish you a great Labor Day weekend.
Thank
Restful
you, sir.
one. We're going to put you in the studio, get some feedback after the show.
Perfect.
Appreciate and close out this of the show. Thanks. So you guys have heard it. It takes a lot. It also takes us coming out of the things that we've always known and trying things differently. If you know anyone in job search and believe this show can help them, please, by all means, comment, like, and share. We are not going to be on next Friday. But we will be back on September 15th with a great guest. We're going to be talking about mental health in job search, because as I said many times, job search is a roller coaster ride of emotions, and a lot of times you're down more than you're up. So we're going to be talking about, okay, how do I see it? More importantly, how do I get myself out of the rut and start moving forward? I want to wish you and everybody happy Labor Day weekend. And job seekers, don't labor the whole weekend away. Rest and recharge.
Your mind will break.